Okay, today we're going to, this is the Corrections and Public Safety Subcommittee, Ways and Means. So we're going to have a hearing on agency budget and possible recommendations. First of all, we'll have the Department of Correction Systems, Nicole Nyker, KLRD, Budget Analyst, to tell us all about it. So Nicole, welcome to committee.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Nicole. It's Rincher, so the H is silent. I know it's a little difficult. I am a fiscal analyst with Legislative Research, and I will be presenting the budget for the Kansas Department of Corrections. In the audience, we have Keith Bradshaw, the Executive Director of Contracts and Finance, who will be giving a presentation after me. And then we also have Secretary Zamuda, who is available for any questions. So for the Kansas Department of Corrections budget summary, this is the system-wide summary. Last year, we split them up into the central office and the facilities. This year, they're all back under one summary. So the system is composed of the KDOC central office, 8 adult correctional facilities, and 1 juvenile correctional facility, as well as the Kansas Correctional Industries. And then the system also composes a network of parole offices and local community corrections entities. So on the first page there, you can see the pie chart with the agency percentage request as percentage of statewide total. KDOC system makes up 5%. If you turn to page 1008, there's a 10-year expenditure history. It's kind of a steady increase as the as costs increase and also as the population increase. There's a slight dip there around fiscal year 2021 due to the COVID and the decline of court cases and sentencing. The next few pages break down the expenditures by category and classification. I was going to go ahead and flip straight to the fiscal year 26 analysis, if that's all right. Or was there anything that you wanted me to?
That'd be fine.
Okay, so we'll go to page 1014. The fiscal year 26 approved amount without reappropriations was $621.7 million, including $581.9 million SGF. Then there was the SGF reappropriations of $32.5 million. The majority of the reappropriations are from the $31.8 million in unspent SGF funds in the evidence-based juvenile programs. In fiscal year 25, all available funds were budgeted but were not expended. So the agency plans to continue to have carryover funds to maintain existing expenditure levels in future years. I do have a special topic section on evidence-based programs in the back. The additional reappropriations are $702,587 in various facility operating accounts. The special budget committee lapsed all of these reappropriations, and then the governor lapsed $23.6 million in the evidence-based programs for a total reappropriation of $8.2 million. As well as she recommended the facility operations. If you turn to the next page, the agency also had reappropriations in the Correctional Institutions Building Fund of $1.3 million. These reappropriated funds will be used to pay for rehabilitation and repair projects at the adult correctional facilities. They also had state institutions building funds, reappropriation of $797,365 that will be used for capital improvement projects at the Kansas Juvenile Correctional Complex. These funds were not lapsed by the SBC because they were capital improvement funds. And then the governor concurred with the agency's recommendation for these, or the agency's request for the reappropriations. The agency only had one supplemental request, which is the food service contract. It's a request of $432,837 SGF to fully fund the food service contract. The fiscal year 26 estimated average daily population is higher than previously anticipated. So the old average daily population was around 9,800, and the new estimated average daily population is 10,000. So the agency states that additional funding is needed to support that increase. Aside from the supplementals, there were also some other changes in the agency's request. The revised estimate includes an increase of $10.5 million from the Kansas Correctional Industries Fund. This increase is largely due to a carry-forward balance related to the new Lansing Correctional Facility private industries building not being completed in fiscal year 25, and the Topeka Correctional Facility and Winfield Correctional Facility buildings entering the construction phase. The agency also had an increase of $3.4 million from the Juvenile Alternatives to Detention Fund. So the agency transferred SGF monies from the Graduated Sanctions Grant account, which is under Juvenile Services, to their operating expenditures account in order to fund the final change order for the new information management system, Athena, and they're offsetting that reduction by increasing expenditures from the Juvenile Alternatives to Detention Fund. All other adjustments, the agency's revised estimate was a decrease of $426,000, all from special revenue funds. It's largely due to anticipated decreases in federal grant funds as existing multi-year grants are starting to wind down. And then the agency adjustment also includes the addition of 8.5 FTE positions due to reallocation of positions, though there was no correlated increase in expenditures. Are there any questions for fiscal year 26 before I move on to 27?
Senator Holter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell me, is it broken out here, the amount that's dedicated to the sex offender treatment program, or is it just allocated through the general funds?
I believe there's not anything broken out specifically for the sex offender treatment. I can see about getting a breakdown for you, though.
Any other questions? Let's proceed, 27.
Okay. So fiscal year 27, again, the 2025 Senate Bill 125 approved amount without reappropriations was $621.7 million. The agency has a number of enhancement requests, which were all deleted by the Special Budget Committee. These enhancement requests include the healthcare services. So the agency requests an additional $7.4 million SGF to address anticipated funding shortfalls for resident healthcare services. And then this is broken out into three different categories. So $5.4 million of it would be for the medical contract that's currently in the process of being rebid, and the agency anticipates factors such as a 5% increase over the old contract. There would be no per capita savings for fiscal year 27 due to average daily population being reset, anticipated declining staff deductions and performance guarantees in the first year relative to estimated fiscal year 26 deductions. And then 1.6 million of that request would be for pharmaceutical and vaccine costs. There's an anticipated 3% increase in pharmaceutical costs for fiscal year 27. And increased costs for vaccines due to no longer receiving the vaccines for free through the Kansas Department of Health. In recent years, the agency has taken over the handling of the pharmaceuticals from the medical contract in order to access 340B prices. The remaining 439,449 SGF is requested to cover the potential loss of federal funding from the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, which is used to reimburse correctional agencies for housing undocumented residents. So the governor recommended 6.9 million of this for this request. Another number 3 enhancement request was the food service contract. So the agency requests an additional 2.1 million SGF to fully fund the food service contract. So there is a 4% increase in the per meal cost. And again, the average daily population is increasing to an estimated 10,365, resulting in a 2.1 million increase over current funding. The governor recommended the full amount. The agency is also requesting 34.5 million SGF for bond debt service to replace the Hutchinson Correctional Facility. This has come up a few times during session, but the agency, rather than asking for the anticipated construction costs of $453 million, as they have in the past, they're asking for bonding authority to finance the construction. So the current estimate provided by the Kansas Development Finance Authority for debt service payments for a 20-year bond issue would start at $34.5 million. And the total cost at the end of the 20 years would be, I believe, about $600 million. The agency is also requesting 5.9 million SGF to repurpose a former KCI showroom into a work release unit building at the Topeka Correctional Facility. So residents who achieve minimum custody status have access to work release beds where they can gain employment in the community and begin preparing for release. But the work release opportunities for the female population are limited, and those who do participate are housed with general population residents. So this work release unit would provide for 40 work release beds separate from the general population. The agency is also requesting, on behalf of the Community Corrections Advisory Committee, an additional 2.2 million SGF. So 1.5 million would be for the behavioral health grant. So the agency states the behavioral health grant has remained at 3 million since it started in fiscal year 2014, and the flat funding has reduced the effectiveness of the grant due to reduced buying power. The remaining 728,000 would be for staff wages and operation costs to allow community corrections agencies to provide competitive wages for staff to maintain trained, skilled officers and current staffing levels. The governor did not recommend 4, 5, or 6. Other changes to the agency's request includes an increase of 2.3 million SGF for increases in fees paid to the Office of Information Technology Services. This increase began in fiscal year 26, but the agency funded that increase within existing resources. There's also an increase of 1.3 million from the Kansas Correctional Industries Fund, largely for the replacement and upgrades of shop and plant maintenance equipment. The agency also had an increase of 7.2 million, all from the CIBF for priority capital improvement projects. So each year the agency identifies priority projects and includes those in their 5-year plan. Division of the budget will reduce the approved amount to the balance available in that account. So the governor decreased that amount, as you'll see on the yellow sheet. Sorry, I have to find. Decreased that amount. She deleted $7.3 million for a total of 4.2 million CIBF, which is reduced to the amount available in the account. The agency's request includes other adjustments resulting in an overall decrease of 871,000. There's a decrease of 1.3 million from special revenue funds for decreases in federal grant funds. That's offset by an increase of 374,000 SGF for increased operating expenditures at the adult correctional facilities. And there's the additional 8.5 FTE positions due to reallocation of positions, but again, there is no correlated increase in expenditures. Before we finish, I do want to add some additional information on the governor recs. So 2 that were included in the agency's appeal to the governor were the TCF nursery, add 815,000 to establish a nursery program at the Topeka Correctional Facility, and the victim information and notification everyday Vine system. So add 259,122 SGF to establish the Vine system for victims registered with KDOC for fiscal year 2027. I believe the agency is going to talk about it, but just a little bit of information. The Vine system, the agency wants to move from its current mail-only victim notification system to the electronic service that delivers quicker and more efficient notices. So the annual cost to serve victims registered with KDOC would be $132,000, and then you have a one-time setup fee of $126,239. Additional governor's recommendation is the JAG-K. Add $6 million SGF to provide additional resources to the JAG-K program. There was an error in that recommendation. So it would not actually be adding an additional $6 million. It would just increase the JAG-K, the amount given to JAG-K to $6 million. So it's currently at $5.5 million. An additional $500,000 would be added to that to be $6 million to come out of the evidence-based programs account. Are there any questions for fiscal year 27?
Any, we got any questions? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the bottom of 1016, the pharmaceutical and vaccine cost, what happened that we are no longer able to get those free?
The agency would have to speak more on what exactly it is, because I believe it has to do with the agreement between KDHE and the agency, and I don't know if it's just that KDHE is not providing them for free anymore due to some reason, but the agency might be able to expand on that.
And then at the top of the next page, is that that cost due to the Big Beautiful Bill?
I do not know that that was in there. I think that they're just anticipating a loss from the federal funding.
Okay, I didn't know where that loss was coming from.
So-
Can I do one more?
Sure.
Okay, and then the JAG-K, has that funding, has that always been in part of the corrections budget?
For a number of years it has. I would have to see exactly when it was added, and the agency might know, but it has been funded for a number of years. For a while, it was at 3.5 million, and that's the expenditure limitation. So it's proviso language in the bill where the agency can give up to 3.5. And last session, that amount was increased to 5.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Clues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. Still kind of digesting this, but just kind of a question on the food service contract. Does, do they pay for are they responsible for their own equipment that's in there, or is that something else funding that?
I know, I think I'm going to let the agency speak on what exactly is included in that contract.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, Nicole, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Keith Bradshaw, Executive Director of Contracts and Finance Department of Correction System. Keith, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Again, my name is Keith Bradshaw, Executive Director of Contracts and Finance. I'll be going over the governor's recommendation, some other information regarding our budget. Let's see. Start off, we'll talk a little bit about the population projections, as this is one of the big cost drivers for our budget. Again, as Nicole mentioned, we did see a drop in our population during COVID when the court shut down. We didn't see the admissions coming in at the same pace that we had been, yet discharges continue at the same rate. So we had a pretty good decrease in the population during that period. Since then, since 2022, when the courts opened back up, our admissions have gone up by about 21.5% since then. We ended fiscal year 25 with 9,727 residents in custody. Our current population is just below 9,700. That is not uncommon for us to see a little bit of a dip in the population coming out of the holiday season. The courts slow down a little bit, and just historically, we've seen those numbers start to go back up once the courts get ramped back up. And the Sentencing Commission is also anticipating that's going to happen. with the projection for 2026 at 10,100 residents by June 30th of this fiscal year. The Census Commission is also projecting that continued growth in the population over the next 10 years, both for the male and female populations. At this pace, we are looking at the resident population meeting the capacity of our facilities by fiscal year 2029. On the male side, we have a little over 9,900 beds. By 2029, the Census Commission is anticipating a population of 10,028 residents. Again, this is without any changes in censusing laws we know it today. And then for the female population, the growth is not nearly as great as on the male side, not as steep of an increase, but still a continued growth there to where, again, by 2029, the Topeka Correctional Facility will not have sufficient space for the anticipated population at that facility. So next, I'll dive into the governor's recommendation. I'll primarily focus on the fiscal 27 recommendation, add in any changes to the 2026 legislative approved budget that's recommended by the governor as appropriate. The governor's recommendation for fiscal year 27 is $629.5 million off funds for KDOC and all the facilities and Kansas Correctional Industries. In the pie chart, you can see the biggest share of our expenditures goes towards facility operations, a little over 50% of that. This is our staffing cost, fuel, utilities, just a general cost to operate the facility. Separate from that is healthcare and food service, which are incorporated into the central office budget. When we add in those two slices of that pie there, we have about 74% of our budget allocated to just incarceration. That doesn't factor in the cost of any of the programming that's provided, and of course, parole services, central office administration, and so forth. To the right of that pie chart, I have broke down what our funding sources are. We are heavily funded by the State General Fund. We do not have much in the way of federal funds that come into our agency, like many other agencies might have. Less than 0.5% of our budget comes from federal sources. Most of that is for Medicaid reimbursements for those residents who may be hospitalized over 24 hours in the community and are otherwise qualified for that. Then we have a little bit coming in for some juvenile services formula grants and some competitive grants we use for victim services staff, and a few other small competitive grants we are able to obtain here and there. The next largest funding source we have is from correctional industries, and this is money that KCI receives in from the sale of goods to other state agencies and to local governments, the nonprofits, and the room board that's earned by residents working private industry jobs, whether it's out in the community or within our facilities. And those funds coming into KCI are then used not just to support their operations, but then to expand those private industry opportunities for our population. We do have about $3 million of that comes in over to KDOC for us to help fund sex offender treatment programming and the food service contract. Drilling this down a little bit more detail on how our funding is broken down. Again, this looks at expenditures by type. As you can see, we're, of course, a very staff-driven agency, very labor-intensive, with over half our budget allocated to salaries and wages. Have roughly 3,400 FTE state employees. 75% of those employees work in our correctional facilities, and roughly 55% of the 3,400 FTE are security staff at our facilities. And again, those are virtually all funded by the State General Fund. The next biggest portion of our budgets goes towards contractual services, and I have that broken down in a separate pie chart there, just to illustrate how much that's dedicated to expenses that we really don't have much control over. And that's the Lansing lease, which again, that facility is on a 20-year lease with Core Civic. I think we're in year 6 of that with a 1.9% escalator on that lease payment. Legal requirement, we have to make that payment regardless. And then the health care and food services contracts are, again, required services we have to provide and have very little flexibility in those expenditures there. Moving on to the food service contract, as part of the governor's recommendations, so we've been contracting with Aramark Correctional Services for many years now. There's 102 contract staff provided by Aramark, and we have over 530 resident workers who get paid a daily rate to work in the kitchens, and another 26 industry workers who, after completing a into-work program, training program, are hired on as hourly workers for Aramark. To answer the question regarding food service equipment, the contract does include a roughly $500,000 that are set aside each year into an escrow account for Airmark to have access to purchase new food service equipment or repair existing equipment. Something we've been doing recently because this equipment's gotten so specialized and so expensive that we've started looking at leasing some equipment. That's been very successful. A couple of our facilities, Hutchinson being the most recent one, where we're actually leasing the dishwasher rather than buying it outright. It's been much more cost effective, and by the time that piece of equipment starts to wear out and reach its end of its service life, we're able to just enter in a new release instead of having to buy a whole new machine there. But regarding the contract for fiscal year 26, the current cost per meal is just over $2 a day, or $2 per meal. With the population growth, we forecast a total budget of about $23.4 million. $23.5 million for fiscal year 26. In 2027, with that continued population growth and our assumption that we'll see another 4% increase in pricing just due to inflation, we are estimating $25.2 million for the food service contract. The governor does include in her recommendation an additional $433,000 in this fiscal year to make sure that contract's fully funded, and then another $2.2 million in FY27 for the contract. Next, I'll speak a little bit to our healthcare services. There are 4 components to our healthcare services program. The largest one we mostly often think about, is the contract with Centurion for medical and mental health services. We also have in the governor's recommendation $1.3 million total for Medicaid reimbursements to hospitals and for any of those residents, again, who are hospitalized over 24 hours and otherwise are qualified for Medicaid. We have funding set aside for our pharmacy services, which we carved out of the Centurion contract back in November 2024 to generate some additional savings. And then we have a contract with the KU Medical Center for contract compliance and oversight. The healthcare contract, we are in the final year of that agreement that we entered into with Centurion in 2020. That was a initial 2-year contract with 2-year renewal options. So the RFP went out this past fall. The bids will be closing on February 10th, and we anticipate after going through the review and evaluation process and negotiations that we'll select a vendor by April of this year, with the intent of that contract starting on July 1st. Contract has 477 FTE assigned to that. And for fiscal year 26, the governor's recommendation is for $85.3 million for the contract with Centurion. Going to 2027, we're anticipating an increase of roughly 5% on that. So the governor did add $5.4 million to the KDOC budget in the governor's recommendation for that contract. Those increases that we're anticipating, we're seeing that across the nation. Many other states have rebid or renegotiated their contracts, have seen increases range from 10% to upwards of 37%. So the increases in healthcare, for correctional healthcare, is not unique to Kansas. What we're seeing is not just the escalation in healthcare salaries for nurses and behavioral health professionals and providers, but also just an increase in offsite costs in general. Just healthcare in general is going up. And with the correctional population having an increased acuity, an aging population, some of the contraband that comes in, we're just continuing to see more and more expense for offsite healthcare, not just in Kansas, but nationwide. Again, on the pharmacy services, we did carve that out of the contract during a renegotiation with Centurion to try to generate some additional savings by reducing the overhead and profit margin on the main healthcare contract, and to leverage 340B pricing that the vendor's not able to access that KDOC is able to as a qualified entity. And so that generated about $2 million worth of savings we're able to reinvest back in the contract for staff. In 2027, the governor's recommendation of $14.3 million doesn't factor in, of course, population growth, 3% increase in the cost of goods, and to offset the loss of the free vaccines we had been getting through KDHE. And as I understand, they lost funding from the federal government for those vaccines, so that's why we're having to pick up that expense now. And lastly, we do have the 4th component of our healthcare program is the contract with the KU Medical Center, and they do the contract compliance and oversight for us, help hold the vendor accountable. They do the regular performance audits, review the performance guarantee metrics. They have a team of physicians who do peer reviews and case reviews. They respond to constituent inquiries and help manage the Medicaid and the pharmacy programs for us. And then for 2027, the governor recommended $2.3 million to continue on that contract. Next regard, I'll speak to the Evidence-Based Programs Fund and the governor's recommendation there. So with this fund, resulted out of the Senate Bill 367 in 2016. And there was an initial influx of revenue into this from the savings from that legislation that's continued to carry forward year over year. The Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee has implemented new programs to get more funding out into communities, yet we still have that balance that continues to carry forward. And so the governor's recommended that portion of that be lapsed in this fiscal year, leaving about $8.2 million of that reappropriation in the fund. That would then be supplementing the existing base appropriation for a total of about $21.7 million of spending in this fiscal year out of the Evidence-Based Programs Fund. And these are all grants going out to the communities to provide services to youth to help prevent them from escalating further into the juvenile justice system, as well as for contracts such as functional family therapy and the juvenile crisis intervention centers. For fiscal year 27, as Nicole indicated, the governor's recommending an additional $500,000 be added to the base appropriation for Evidence-Based Programs Fund, with the intent of that being allocated to the JAG-K program. So their funding would be at a even $6 million per year. Included in the governor's recommendation was funding to renovate some space at the Topeka Correctional Facility for a nursery program, which this is modeled over off of some programs that we've seen in Nebraska and in Missouri. And this would renovate some space in one of our living units, add 6 rooms, a couple bathrooms, a day room, and a kitchen, laundry facilities for expectant mothers who are eligible to participate in the program. We anticipate that we'll have anywhere from 2 to 8 mothers with their infants being served by this program annually once it's up and running. It will be focused on those who whose child would be born no more than 18 months prior to the individual's release date, and that mother would be expected to be the primary caregiver to participate in the program, amongst some other qualifications for the residents to participate in this. Again, that's $816,000 for the renovation of the space, and then operating costs is estimated about $413,000 a year, with a lot of the supplies, materials to operate the program being donated by the community. The governor also recommended the funding for the Victim Information and Notification Every Day program that Nicole had mentioned, and this would allow our victim services staff to start providing real-time notifications to the victims that are registered for services. Right now, we have nearly 41,000 individuals who are registered for services through our Victim Services Office. They send out over 21,000 notifications by mail a year, anything from prisoner review board decisions, transfers, escape from custody, release from custody. And what the issue we run into is that oftentimes by the time that letter catches up with them, they've already heard it through social media or the local media of what's happening. Oftentimes that mail doesn't get it to them. They don't have a current address on file, gets sent to the wrong person, and so forth. So with this program, they're able to sign up electronically through an app on their phone or on their desktop. They get those notifications on an almost real-time basis. And if they move, they can go in there and get that address changed immediately without having to call in or mail that into central office and have that updated. For the initial setup and first year of licensing, that's about $259,000, and the ongoing licensing cost for that is roughly $133,000. Just a couple of brief updates. A couple of years ago, the legislature gave us bonding authority to construct a new support services building at the Topeka Correctional Facility. And so that project is progressing. We're wrapping up the design phase here shortly, anticipate putting this out to bid here in the spring for the construction. Anticipate the construction starts sometime in May or June of this year, with the goal of the building being completed and ready for occupancy by January 2028. And this is, again, we'll just bring in a lot of the duplicative services between the two compounds at the Topeka Correctional Facility into one location, one staff entrance, one visitation area, one medical and behavioral health area for the population. And then lastly, regarding our capital improvements program, we have in our 5-year capital plan about $65 million worth of projects we have identified of needs over the next 5 years. And in fiscal 27, about $51 million worth of priority needs identified by facilities management staff and the wardens. We only have $8.1 million available to do that. So again, we'll have to continue to prioritize that priority list to take care of what we can as best as possible with the funding that we have available. The Correctional Institutions Building Fund, we're anticipating $4.1 million coming from that. That is capped at roughly $4.9 million annually coming in from the Gaming Revenues Fund. However, there's a portion that comes off the top of that goes to Department Administration to pay for state building insurance premiums, and that continues to go up. So that's continuing eating into the funding that's available to come back to KDOC to invest in our rehab and repair program. And then the governor's recommendation continues the $4 million of SGF funding that was appropriated, I think, 2 years ago to help us out with this backlog of projects moving forward. For our juvenile facility, the Kansas Juvenile Correctional Complex, they have about $611,000 worth of projects identified, which are all funded from the State Institutions Building Fund. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll stop here and stand for any questions you or the committee may have.
Okay, thank you. Senator Owens.
Mr. Chairman. So a couple of questions for you, Keith. First of all, there seems to be a blaring gap in your request that does not include around $450 million for Hutch. What happened to that? We talked about it about 2.5 months ago.
Yes, that's correct. So the governor did not recommend funding for the Hutchinson project this year. The governor did propose a couple years ago that the replacement of the facility be done through cash financing versus bonding. That was ultimately not approved by the legislature. So while the governor believes that replacement of Hutchinson should be a priority, and that's something that needs to be discussed further with the legislature on how to best do that in a financially responsible way.
All right, duly noted. I was all prepared for that conversation this year. So I guess I'll table that till next year because you're right. It's a can we keep kicking down the road that we're going to have to take care of for sure. Evidence-based programs fund. You know, I realize that you guys are bound by the governor's recommendations. We're not. But can you tell me what happens if that evidence-based program fund is depleted?
At some point, if there's insufficient funds available in that, we're going to have to start coming back on programs. That's unfortunate. That's going to be the reality of it. Over the years, there have been some additional spending requirements put in statute by the legislature or through a proviso in the appropriations bill. So we do have spending requirements we have to make out of that fund. That carry forward balance we've been relying on for the last few years. What we have enough to get us through probably 2027, probably 2028, at which point the decisions are going to have to be made of whether we start cutting back on some of these programs, whether the ones established in statute or those that are approved by the JJOC, start cutting back on those, or request additional funding be appropriated to the evidence-based programs fund to build that base budget back up to sustain the programs that are already out there.
Thank you for that, Keith, because I do know in the governor's budget, she's trying to sweep $23 million out of that fund into SGF. $10 million was swept last year, and the reality is we're going to be in the same exact place as the conversation we're having with the Children Initiative Fund right now, because legislature over the years has pillaged the Kansas Endowment for Youth, and therefore we're going to have to make a decision this year either to kill programs or fund it through SGF. So it's obviously been an important fund to me to continue to protect, and so I'll definitely have some language as it relates to that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other question? Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you were here on my page 4, this particular slide, did you mention something about core civic contracts?
Yes, so what we have is a lease purchase agreement with Core Civic that we entered into 2018 to build a new facility at Lansing. So under that agreement, they were responsible for the construction of the new facility there, open up in the spring of 2020. And then that is a 20-year lease purchase agreement to where Core Civic is responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the new facility. KDOC still continues to operate that. That's our staff running the facility, reports to our warden who reports to the secretary. So the only staff that's involved with that facility there are the maintenance staff that Core Civic provides to maintain the facility during the term of that 20 years. After the 20-year lease ends, then this building comes and becomes possession of the state of Kansas.
You follow up, Senator? Or? Okay. Anybody else? Quick question on my part, Keith. The Topeka Correctional Facility, that $40 million for construction, and then the bond part of that. So if we don't take care of the debt service for bonds, then they don't go out for bonding? Is that kind of how that works, or? Because I'm sitting here saying I'd either want to pay for this cash, or that's a revenue bond that I've been talking about.
Yes.
And we put that off till we get that corrected because we can save a little money. So that's my thought.
Well, those bonds had already been issued. That was a joint bond issue with KDOC, I believe K-State for a project, and maybe KBI was the third agency that was issued. That was one bond issue. The debt service payments are built into the Department of Administration budget since it was a single bond issue for those three agencies at that time. So those bonds have already been issued out and drawn down on.
Hey, committee, that's kind of my point I want to make. There's a prime example. That was a revenue bond that was done, not a GO. So sounds like we're already committed to that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next we have a hearing on agency budget and possible recommendations on the Adjutant General's Department. We have Kyle Anderson, KLRD, Budget Analyst. Kyle, welcome committee.
Don't have any of the budget documents, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no, just hang on just a minute. Before we do that, is Steve Willis here? I missed that one. Steve, I'm sorry. Thank you, Keith. I was looking at the deal. Next, we're still back into the Department of Corrections. Steve Willis, Shawnee County Committee Corrections Director / Kansas Community Corrections Association. Steve, I'm sorry I missed you. Welcome to committee. Okay, yeah.
There you go. Stuart was sharing that you may not have copies of this. You mind if I provide you some? Yeah, this will be pretty quick. So I just, Chairman, thank you for allowing us to share a little bit and add on to what the Kansas Department of Corrections was sharing. I'll just quickly share, my name is Steve Willis. I oversee community corrections, and I am the Vice President of the Kansas Community Corrections Association. Community corrections is part of the three entities of supervision within the state. We are different in the fact that we are a county agency that is state grant funded. We were created as a part to, for those individuals who were being revoked to prison, officers are assigned to assess criminogenic need, address those risk factors, build individualized case plans, monitor attendance into required programming, and address any transportation, housing, or any other services necessary. I'll point you to page 6 on these slides, the cost avoidance to share. Community Corrections offers an $11.41 per day supervision cost, and it's comparative to our current prison cost at $109. That's roughly 1/10 the cost for supervision of our felony conviction population. In addition to the supervision savings, individuals remain employed, paying taxes, supporting families, and contributing to the economy rather than being a drain on the state resources. This presentation was initially set up with Randy Regier, our director in Reno County and Hutchinson. He's the KCCA president. His slide on page 7, the Reno County example for what it would cost for community corrections versus a prison stay. He shared that in Reno County last year, the average supervision length was 21 months, and the average underlying prison sentence was 37 months. So one successful case represents over $100,000 in incarceration costs avoided. Last year, Reno County had 125 successful closures, resulting in $14.5 million in savings over the course of that time frame that was shared between that 21-month sentence. Interestingly, I thought that was a pretty impactful number, so I reviewed Shawnee counties just to see. We were a little bit bigger of an agency, and last year we had 306 individuals successfully closed out. Using the same time frame that Randy had, that was a $35.5 million cost avoidance of incarceration for Shawnee County. I know it was discussed in the Kansas Department of Corrections budget. Community Corrections is requesting $728,000 in supervision funds, additional to what we currently receive, which is on the adult side, $32 million, and the juvenile side, $26 million. This additional $728,000 is set up for just inflationary adjustment that allows agencies to maintain competitive wages and improve staff retention, and also cover operational costs. Along with that $728,000, we are requesting a $1.5 million for the behavioral health grant. This grant has retained $3 million since fiscal year 14. Over 10 years of flat funding has significantly reduced purchasing power, while treatment, housing, and medication costs have increased. Investing in behavioral health services reduces revocations and prevents prison admissions. Lastly, I just want to add regarding the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee and our evidence-based programming. In Shawnee County, we currently provide nearly $1 million worth of that EBP fund to Shawnee County partners, which help establish programs for our youth. And that story could be shared across the state now with those funds, that the impact that they're having currently is rather large. And we would like to consider that be a conversation through this legislative year. Thank you. And I'll stand for questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Kyle, we'll let you come up now.
All right, good afternoon. I am Kyle Anderson with the KLRD, and we are first going to start with the Adjutant General's budget.
Let's see, we have budget stuff here.
Oh.
And we got the budget for the Kansas Highway Patrol. Well, we need to probably hold up just a minute here. What, I got my stuff down in the office. Yeah, okay. Here we go. Here we come. Hot off the press. Yeah, we could have worked that one. We needed to.
All right, take two on that.
Hey, Kyle.
So on the first page, there's a quick summary about what the agency does. They oversee the National Guard and most of the emergency management program of the state. And they're also heavily involved in the state homeland security practices. The table there in the middle of the page provides you a snapshot of the recent history of the agency. In the SB 125 from the last legislature, the all funds appropriation for 26 was 95.6 million. The revised request is for $101.3 million, and fiscal year 27's request is for $98.5 million. The two pie charts, the Adjutant General's budget is roughly just under 1%, both the all funds and SGF appropriations of the state. On page 2, there is a quick snapshot of the enhancement packages of the agency and the request for the 26 reappropriation. Starting with the first one there, the fiscal year 26 reappropriation for $2.6 million is requested. That's tied to emergency management and disaster funds. And in fiscal year 27, there is a $17.1 million total in disaster funding, $15.1 million of which is federal funds and 2.0 of which is the state match. And page 3, labeled 965 in the aggregate numbering, provides a 10-year snapshot of the agency. There is an all-fund peak in fiscal year 25 from last year associated with some increases in capital projects, which is outlined a little more clearly in the chart on page 4 there. You can see that the state aid and capital budget related items are the peaks there for the associated buildings and disaster funding therein. The categoric expenditures are broken down on the bottom of that, and the state operations is more detailed, broken down on page 6. The state aid package is broken down on page 7, and the programmatic breakdown of expenditures and positions is on page 8. Beginning on page 9, we have the outline of the general fees fund, which is an extraneous repository for the agency that receives some funding from KDOT for Communications on Wheels, a 911 coordinator from the state 911 board, tax credits from armory renovations, and the Fusion Center. The associated balance from 2004 going forward is then provided on the following page. Beginning on page 972, we have the actual fiscal year 26 analysis. As noted on the front page snapshot, the SB 125 appropriation was for $93.1 million. The first line item there, number 2, is again the SGF reappropriation of $2.6 million. The item number 3 then begins the adjustments to the fiscal year 26 request. So to begin, item number 3 is an increase of $15.1 million for contractual services, and this is largely attributable to their communication protocol services and professional services, which includes things like their accounting auditors, legal counsel, and things of that nature. Other contractual services in that increase are associated with regular building operation contracts and utilities. Item number 4 is an increase of $9.5 million for contractual service or for capital improvements, and this is largely associated with the Nickel Hall foundation repair to fix the off shift from the foundation of that building, which is otherwise still usable. Item number 5 is an increase of $533,311 in salaries and wages. This is just general CPIU and cost indices increases associated with those salaries and wages. Item number 6 is capital outlay increase of $378,950 with a decrease of $509,588. The offset in those is largely associated with just a rearrangement of what funding accounts different funds are being used for to pay for different expenditures. And that increase is predominantly associated with office furniture to outfit the new state defense building. Item number 7 is a decrease of $1.6 million in commodities, including an $848,440 SGF decrease, and that's predominantly due to reductions in grounds expenditure materials. Item number 8 is a decrease of $18.5 million, including $3.4 million of SGF for aid to locals. And this reflects a reduction in anticipated disaster recovery expenditures. Item number 9 is an other adjustments increase of $72,117, including decrease of $307,883 SGF and a decrease of a half FTE position. Again, the rearrangement of funds is the difference in the increase and decrease of all of their adjustments there. And the half FTE position is associated with a realignment in positions after an assessment of needs. Any questions for fiscal year 26?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the governor's recommendation. Top line at 29.1, 3.4 SGF for disaster funds. I'm not seeing that in here. Am I missing it somewhere? Or is that just a pure addition on her account?
Mr. Chairman, from my understanding of reading the governor's budget request, this is in addition to the agency's request.
Okay, well, I'll ask the agency if they can shed some light on that for me. Thank you.
Go ahead, proceed.
Carrying on to page 974 with the fiscal year 27 request, the first line item, again, as noted on the snapshot on page 2, is for the disaster funding of $17.1 million, including $15.1 million federal funds and $2 million of matching state funds. And that is for various disaster recovery expenditures and reimbursement payments. Item number 2 is a contractual services increase of $15.3 million, including a decrease of $181,616 SGF. And that is, again, as with fiscal year 26, largely associated with their cellular and communication protocol services and professional services. Item number 3 is the all funds increase of $871,692, including an increase of $1.5 million SGF for salaries and wages. And again, that was largely associated with CPI-U and cost indices increases. Item number 4 is other assistance increase of $380,200, including $200 SGF. And those are increases for distributions to qualified aid organizations that help in disaster recovery and emergency mitigation. Item number 5 is an increase of $378,950, including a decrease of $509,588 SGF for capital outlays. The increase is predominantly associated with office furniture expenditures and partially offset by hardware expenditures. Item number 6 is a decrease of $1.6 million for commodities, including a decrease of $848,436 SGF. And this is, again, largely due to a decrease for the materials and parts for grounds maintenance purchases. Item number 7 is a decrease of $2 million in capital improvements. And this is largely attributable to reductions in new building expenditures for fiscal year '27. Item number 8 is a decrease of $25 million in aid to locals, including a decrease of $2.3 million SGF. Again, as with fiscal year '26's revised request, that is a decrease due to anticipated reductions in disaster recovery reimbursement payments. Item number 9 is an all other adjustments increase of 118,119 SGF and a decrease of half an FTE position. And as with fiscal year '26, the half FTE position is associated with realignment of positions. Any questions for fiscal year '27?
Me? Don't have any. Kyle, thank you very much. Okay, next we have Lieutenant Colonel Keith Marshall, Adjutant General Department. Lieutenant Colonel, welcome to committee. Keep it as short as you can for us if you can.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Lieutenant Colonel Keith Marshall, Legislative Liaison with the Adjutant General's Department. General Schneider sends his regrets he could not be with us today. He's out in DC this week. So I do have Angie Morgan, who's our Deputy Director for Emergency Management, with me here, as well as Beth Visosky, who is our Agency Comptroller. I'm going to take the tactic of working off of the Senate's base budget bill, since we had the opportunity to address the interim budget committees, and just basically tell you what we need that is not in the base budget bill. Starting out, looking at our reappropriations, so that's $2.568 million in agency reappropriations. Those are mostly for KDEM operations, so emergency management functions. There are two items in there that I'm going to address specifically. One is a $2.1 million amount for disaster relief. That is money that is waiting to match a federal reimbursement. So we have $17.4 million at FEMA in reimbursement requests in federal funding. As soon as FEMA clears that backlog and sends us that $17.4 million, then we will expend that $2.1 million in agency funds. So that's the reason that money has not been spent yet in this fiscal year. In my testimony, I gave you a short sampling of some of the projects that are covered by those reimbursements. As you can see, those are roads and bridges, debris removal, utility projects from around the state, large cities, small towns, rural areas that have all been impacted by some type of disaster, that have completed those projects and are now waiting for reimbursement from the state and the federal government. So we will spend that money as soon as we get the reimbursed amount from FEMA. The second item in our reappropriations is for the Office of Emergency Communications. It's just under $300,000. This is simply an accounting error. That money was being spent out of one of our other funds, and then our comptroller would draw that down from that account. He left the agency before making that funds transfer, so it looks like that money is unspent when in fact it actually was spent. So that all falls within that $2.6 million reappropriation amount that we would request not to be lapsed in the budget bill. So the second thing I have is an enhancement request. This is a $4 million amount. This one is key because you will not see this in KLRD's budget summary that you just heard, because this rose up after we submitted our agency budget request. It is in the governor's budget request. It's a little over $5 million in the governor's budget request. Since we found out about this shortfall, we have implemented cost-saving measures and cuts. So that's why you see us requesting an amount that's about $1 million less than the governor's budget request. So that's about $4 million to make up for what's called the Emergency Management Performance Grant. This is a 3-year grant program from the Federal Emergency Management Agency that funds KDEM salaries and operations. We apply for the grant, and then we expend the money, and then the grant essentially reimburses after the fact. For fiscal year 2024, FEMA notified us after the fact that they were not going to include that performance period of 2024 in the grant award, even though it was in the notice of funding opportunity. So we spent the money in good faith, assuming that we were going to be reimbursed, like our years-long, even decades-long relationship with FEMA had indicated. And then FEMA kind of came in after the fact and changed the rules on us after we'd already spent that money. So there's about a $4 million gap there in funding that is grants that we expected to have that we did not have. $2.5 million of that amount will go towards KDEM salaries and operations. $1.5 million is passed through to the counties for their emergency management functions. So not only KDEM, but the counties rely on that grant program for their emergency management functions. There really is no alternative for us to make up for that lack in grant funding because it was a surprise. This is a one-time backfill. FEMA essentially changed the rules midstream on us, and we lost that entire year of funding through no fault of the state and without any advance notice. So that money will essentially ensure that KDEM does not have any interruptions as they're planning for, busy winter storm season that we're already experiencing this week, the upcoming spring and summer storms that we have, and then one of the busiest events that Kansas will ever see is the World Cup. And KDEM plays a pretty important role in keeping Kansas safe during that event as well. So if we can get this enhancement request, that will go a long ways towards them being able to ensure continuous operations for the state during any kind of disaster. Mr. Chairman, last thing that I want to address is our FY27 enhancement request. This is approximately $2 million for disaster relief. This is our normal request that we come before the committee for every year. There are ongoing disaster projects around the state. The federal government pays for 75% of those through FEMA disaster relief, and then the state matching is 10%. So we project in FY27 that FEMA is going to expend $15 million in public assistance in Kansas, and we will be required to match $2 million to that. So this is a normal request that you hear from us every year. Not new spending. It's our state's cost share to unlock those federal dollars. And without that match, we would be in violation of our state and federal agreement. So, Mr. Chairman, that's kind of all I have for you, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Senator Owens, you got any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, in essence, what I was asking staff about, that 3.4, you're saying is actually what you were talking about, that $4 million for the, what was that, the management performance grant?
Yes, sir. The Emergency Management Performance Grant. So what we're actually asking for is just over $4 million for that.
Well, I don't even see that number anywhere on here. So you're saying just over 4 million. What is
Correct.
that number specifically?
That number is $4,002,388. So 4002388.
It's sad that I had to think about that for
I
a
did
second
too.
to make that all write down correctly. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Senator Close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So will you guys be able to tap into any of that money that's kind of been distributed for, or that's coming for the World Cup, either state or Fed? I know we appropriated some money.
So we anticipate that we will. We have people from our agency that are embedded in the KC 2026 planning, and we should be able to use that to our understanding. Yes, Senator.
Do you know what that looks like or not yet?
I don't know if, Angie, do you want to address that one? I'll let Angie Morgan. She's been more involved in the World Cup planning than I have.
Good afternoon. I'm Angie Morgan, Deputy Director of Kansas Emergency Management. We are heavily involved with KC 26 and the metro counties in the state of Missouri on the FIFA planning. This week, we are meeting with all of the state agencies to identify gaps and try to identify a budget. So if we need to request resources out of state through the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, we'll know what those are. If we have to place the search and rescue team on standby, that's $50,000 a day. And we're going to present that to the governor's staff and then look at the fundings streams.
Okay, it would be nice to get a copy of that when you get that information, just so we kind of keep eyes on. Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
want to get that quickly. We need a governor's declaration to start negotiating with other states because we're responsible for any funds that they incur while they're in our state. So that's the mechanism that we can do that. So we wanted to get ahead of it, and that's what we're doing this week.
Yeah, especially so we don't see something happen like losing that funding last time. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, if it's okay with the committee, I think we'll go ahead and
Thank you.
work this one up. Do you have a motion?
Yeah, sure, I've got that, Mr. Chairman, for you. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we pass out the Adjutant General's budget as prepared by the Special Committee on State Budget with the following additions. That would be the reappropriation as requested of $2,568,860, as well as the Emergency Management Performance Grant in the amount of $4 million, see, I wrote it down, $4,002,388, as well as in fiscal year '27, the disaster funding enhancement of $2,010,255. So on your yellow sheet, it's the bottom one, the middle one, and then the addition of the 4 million on top. And I'll go ahead and make that motion at this time.
We got a motion, we got a second? Any discussion? That cover it, you think? Kyle, you got that? On the motion? Okay, his notes. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Okay, next we'll have a hearing. We're going to have to run this one quick because there's another group coming in here. I'd sure like to get this one worked, though. Hearing on agency budget and possible recommendations, Kansas Highway Patrol, Kyle Anderson. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
All righty, I'm still Kyle, and we're now going to talk about Highway Patrol. Again, the first page provides a little bit of a summary. They largely patrol the whole state and also cover a number of motor carrier inspection and motor carrier assistance tasks across the state. The agency is not funded by SGF without extraneous circumstances. For example, the 28.8 million in fiscal year 27 is one of those instances. The 26 approved number was for 157.4 million, and the revised request goes up to 159.2, and in fiscal year 27, the revised request is for 177.9 million. Page 2 is a snapshot of the enhancement requests. In fiscal year 26, they are requesting $2 million for the phase 1 of the general headquarters relocation to the Curtis State Office Building. Item number 2 is a request for $234,990 for IT infrastructure purchases. And then in fiscal year 27, the first item there is $4.7 million to renovate the southbound Olathe Scale House. Item number 2 is 28.8 million SGF for relocation of troops CNS to West Salina. Item number 3 is 4 million for the air support unit. Item number 4 is 3.2 million for equipment and technology modernization associated with their TASER system. Item number 5 is $2 million for phase 2 of the general headquarters relocation. And item 6 is a request for $250,000 for an introduction of a comprehensive wellness program. Turning to page 3, there is a snapshot of the 10-year history. The local peak in fiscal year 23, if I am not mistaken, is largely associated with ARPA purchases for the air support unit. You can see a little bit more of a breakdown of how that all works out in the chart on page 1024 and the associated table therein. The state operations expenditures are broken down on page 1025. I will note that the equipment furniture line also includes the purchases of their vehicles. So that is one of the reasons that the equipment furniture line looks so large comparatively. The state aid and capital budget expenditures are broken down a little bit on page 1026, and then the programmatic breakdown on 1027. The operations fee fund, or operations fund on page 1028 is the main operating budgetary mechanism for the agency and receives transfers from the state highway fund for its general revenue source. Then page 1029 begins our actual fiscal year 26 analysis. The non-appropriation SB 125 amount was for $157.4 million. Items 2 and 3 are supplemental requests. The first of which is again the phase 1 of the relocation of the general headquarters for $2 million. The agency is moving to the Curtis State Office Building, and in a two-phase series of actions. They are working to redesign the section of the building that they are going to be moving to for the needs of the agency. The total of that project is intended to be about $4 million. Item number 3 is the IT infrastructure for $234,990, and that is a replacement of 2 F5 network devices, as well as 22 personal computers in the dispatch system. Then on the other changes to the adjustments for standard expenditures, item number 4 is an expansion of the motor carrier inspections program for $500,142, and that is associated with the increased weight enforcement efforts that are part of the request for the statewide enforcement plan submitted to the Federal Highway Administration. Item number 5 is an increase of $442,535 for an expansion of the Motorist Assistance Program. This is largely to expand coverage for the World Cup and events after the fact, and that would include additional trucks, debris movers, and the associated equipment for 2 additional motor assistance technicians. Item number 6 is a decrease of $1.4 million in capital improvements, including $226,000 from the operations fund, and this is largely associated with a suspension of major capital improvement projects at the training academy until they figure out a final outcome for where they are moving things and how they are disposing of that facility. Item number 7 is a reduction of $118,628 from the operations fund, and a reduction of 6 FTE positions, and that is a result of a comprehensive review of the need of the agency, and those positions were moved off budget. The associated funding is related to the Homeland Security Program. Any questions for 26? Moving on to fiscal year 27. The first line item there is a removal of the $24 million for the central dispatch move that was funded with ARPA dollars in fiscal year 26. And that leaves an adjusted approved number of $133.4 million. The next 6 items are again the enhancements on the page 2 snapshot. The first of which is a request of $28.8 million SGF for relocation of the Troop CNS to West Salina. And this is a request to move the Troop CNS to the location of the new Central Dispatch Center being built in West Salina on KDOT property, and would also include a 3,000-foot square foot building space for the KBI to have office space in the central region of the state. Item number 3 is the southbound Olathe Scale House replacement for $4.7 million. Back in 2008, the state undertook an assessment of all the way stations across the state. There's 8 of those, and it recommended a replacement of one of those per year. At the time, the state didn't have money, and the Highway Patrol and KDOT have now undertaken a project to try and revamp those. The first being the southbound Olathe Scale House. Item number 4 is an increase of $4 million for the air support unit, and they're looking to replace a 98 Cessna 206 stationaire with a new Cessna 206 that would also be outfitted with law enforcement equipment. Item number 5 is the equipment and technology modernization, increase of $3.2 million for replacement of the Taser X2 with the Taser 10, as well as the replacement of the training program therein. Item number 6 is the phase 2 of the general headquarters relocation project with Curtis State Office Building. Item number 7 is $250,000 for a comprehensive wellness program. The agency is looking to introduce a wellness program for the health and wellness of its employees and seeking state funds to match that. Item number 8. Sounds good.
Later date. So you guys might check with Donna. I think it's tomorrow, she was telling me, so. Thank you very much. With that, meeting adjourned.